And welcome, everybody, to Geeking Poetic Podcast channel. I'm one of your hosts, Larry Roberts. This stormtrooper back from the dead over here to my right is none other than
Megan Guess.
And we're here to talk about
Star Wars Ahsoka, Episode 6, Far, Far Away.
Yep, man, a lot to talk about with this episode. It was very involved.
That's a great word for it.
Yeah. I'm not going to say it was great. I'm not going to say it was bad. It was involved. There was a lot that happened in this episode. We saw, after the last episode being a flashback, going backwards looking, this one sees us moving forward at last. We had some big reveals in this one.
We did.
Yeah. How did you feel about it overall?
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
There, some highs, some lows.
Yeah.
We'll get into, so. Maybe like an average episode. We'll see.
Average, yeah. And it's interesting that this episode of all of them would be considered average, given that this revealed so much.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just because it's so much to unpack still, where I'm still digesting everything.
Sure.
To really comprehend everything that happened in this episode.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page with you when it comes to that. In these discussions about Ahsoka, we'll give you a fairly quick generalization of the plot and, just recap what happened. Mm-hmm. And then we get into our perceived highlights and lowlights. And then we'll get into some theories and stuff. That's usually kind of the fun part of it. Yeah, that's the fun part. And everything. But before we go any further, aside from telling all of you that we thank you so much for all of your support, we had a lot of really good response to the last episode. Yeah, it took off. So that was great. We love to see all those likes, all those views and comments and everything. Keep them coming. But for those that are new to this, if this is the first time you are listening to us talk about this, we have spoilers. We are going to talk about everything. So if you're not caught up on the show, then I suggest you do not listen to what we're talking about.
Not proceed. Back up.
Yeah, exactly. Just back it up. Back it up. And come back to us later, okay? Now, with that being said, let's get into the episode, Far, Far Away. So the episode starts out with Ahsoka and Huyang traveling through hyperspace in their ship inside the mouth of a purgle whale. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something to see there. That's pretty cool, actually. They start talking about Sabine, and of course, Ahsoka is very upset with Sabine, and she can only see it one way, as Ahsoka tends to do, that she's like, oh, she betrayed us and she sided with the enemy and all this. And Huyang's like, I don't think it was quite that
cut and dry.
Simple. Yeah, exactly. I think there was more to it than that. And,
Boy, I hope so.
The whole thing of being inside these purgle whales and stuff brings them to talking about the tales that Huyang used to tell all the younglings back in the day at the Jedi Temple and stuff. And because Ahsoka doesn't like being questioned or told that maybe her view on things is wrong and all that stuff, she tells Huyang, well, why don't you tell me one of these old tales of yours after all? And it was super cool getting to hear David Tennant say, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. That was like some...
that was a nice little touch.
Yeah, exactly. That's when you insert the meme of Leonardo DiCaprio pointing, being like, there it is. I know that. Yeah, exactly. And that is all we see of those two characters for the episode.
That's it for Ahsoka.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And then we're done. No. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Morgan Elsbeth, Baylan Skull, Shin Hati, and Sabine are aboard the Eye of Sion, and they are just now arriving to their destination, which is the planet of Peridia. Now, Peridia, we find out, is the ancient homeworld of Elsbeth's people, known as the Dathomiri. They end up being greeted by the Great Mothers.
Mm-hmm. The three Great Mothers.
Yeah, the three Great Mothers. And it's funny when Shin is like, oh my God, more witches. Like, you could tell that Shin has been coming along this ride the whole time, trying to be like the good apprentice and everything, but she's just sort of like constantly wide-eyed and like, what are we doing?
What is the end game here?
What are we doing here? Now there's a bunch of witches. We're in a completely different galaxy. You brought Sabine Wren along for some weird reason. Like, she's trying to be the good apprentice and stuff, and Balin's just sort of like, chill, like I've got a plan.
Time will show us.
Yeah, we get to meet the Great Mothers, and we get to hear from Elsbeth a backstory about her people, talking about the Night Sisters. A positive about this episode is they did go to a little bit of extra lengths to explain things throughout this episode.
Yeah, we needed it in this one.
Yeah, this
whole
one is...
different universe, we need it.
Oh my gosh. So even for people like us that are fairly up on stuff and on the extended universe kind of stuff, like, there's a lot to take in here. So anyway, we got to hear the backstory about the Night Sisters, and then we also get to see that these witches are none too pleased that Sabine Wren has been brought along.
No, they smell a Jedi, which is weird because they didn't smell the other two.
Right.
I was like, why didn't that stand? Why just Sabine?
I don't know. Maybe because she had been so recently, with Ahsoka and had been training in Jedi
Jedi she doesn't
ways.
Even have power.
Well, we don't know. We don't know that. She hasn't been able to tap into those powers, but does that mean she doesn't have them? We don't know that. And I have a feeling they're building up to that, So,
I'll tell.
Yeah.
Gotta know. Wait, be patient. It will show.
Yeah, exactly. So speaking of waiting, they're waiting for Grand Admiral Thrawn's arrival. Baylan Skoll, in the meantime, is telling Shin his belief that the fall of the Jedi and the rise of the Empire are just all part of this inevitable cycle. And that we talked about that in the past episodes, that that's been the problem here, and that we suspected that was what his big problem was from the other things he said, was that it's like, man, nothing ever changes. And I think that this hints a lot at Balin's character even more, is that, so he's not a dark Jedi. He's not Darth Maul. He's not Darth Sidious. He's not something like that. This is a disillusioned Jedi. If anything, he's actually very faithful to the original concept of Jedis.
Very.
And he feels that the Jedi
got lost.
Failed. Yeah, they lost their way, and they got too tangled up in all this stuff and this constant back and forth with, here comes the Empire and the Jedi and the Empire and the Jedi, just cyclical over and over again.
Yeah, which is what we thought all this time. It's like, he's not bad.
No. Exactly.
Technically,
he's not exactly
bad.
good. He's not exactly good. He'll do some non-Jedi stuff, you know what I mean? But
to get to his end game.
Yeah, but he's not, in his heart, I don't think he's bad, and it's going to be interesting to see how they're
It's a complicated character.
Right, and
I love it.
Yeah, and Ray plays it great. Such a shame he's not around anymore, because it was a shame anyway, but now that we're seeing how this character's developing,
I want more of it.
I know. Yeah, it's a real bummer that he's gone. This whole cycle of back and forth with the Jedi falling and the Empire rising and so on and so forth is a cycle that Baylan is hoping to break. Shin shows that she's really eager to get that power that you were talking about. Like, you could see that.
Like, do we have power now?
Yeah, do we have power? Like, she wants to be powerful. And again, that hints to me that it's like, oh, we're going to have a problem. Yeah. We're going to have a problem with these two, because I think she's being led in her mind to believe they're after something that he's not after.
Right.
And I think we're going to run into a problem with that.
You're like, this is it? No.
Yeah. But yeah, because Skull basically indicates to her that, he's more specifically looking to, in not so few words, to sort of right past wrongs and to seek a new beginning.
Yes.
And that's kind of what he's after. So yeah, anyway, it'll be interesting to see how that's going to play out with those two specifically.
Yeah, we have some theories we'll get to.
Yes, we will. So at last, we get to see a really amazing scene as Sabine is in her cell, desperately trying to use the Force to get her way out, and starts to rumble. But it is, unfortunately, Sabine, it's not you having Force powers. It is the arrival of Grand Admiral Thrawn and his ship. It was really cool getting to see the scale of it over the Dethmiri Temple and all that stuff. Like, that was impressive.
It was.
Yeah.
it looked a little sexy.
Oh, it looked sexy. Okay.
It looked a little, yeah.
Okay.
The tower was one thing, and
oh,
was
I see.
the ship on top.
You have a dirty mind, man.
I was like, wait, is that what that is?
Oh my gosh.
Little things at the bottom.
I'm so pathetic because all I could think of was that it reminded me of my Hasbro Fleet series ships where it came with that stand that attaches to the bottom.
Really?
Because I was like, wow, it's cool. It looks like my toy that goes on the stand. And we have
that's not where I went.
Very different mindsets on that. So anyway, Thrawn shows up in the Chimera, and at first he seems pretty pleased to be back, and he's pleased that Morgan Elsbeth and the Great Mothers have done their job and all this stuff. He seems like he's pretty jazzed about it. However, he starts to realize that things aren't going completely...
Yeah, they didn't foresee something.
Yeah, going to plan, because he was not expecting her to show up with Sabine Wren, of all people, in tow.
I know, I'm kind of excited about where that could go, which we'll get into.
Yeah, well, it's also exciting anytime that you see the master tactician not foreseeing
throwing a curveball.
Right, yeah, there's loose threads, as they put it, where it's like, I wasn't expecting that loose thread to be here. And then when he's questioning, well, why is she here? And then he comes to find out that there are two Jedis, for the lack of a better term,
word, yeah.
In Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati are there. And I love, and it just the thing that I got a kick out of with this, I want to bring up here, is that Morgan Elsbeth, she tries so hard to be like, I am so wise and badass and all this stuff, and in her own way she is, but at the same time she shows herself to be really naive and really not aware of a lot of things, because I love that she just introduces them like, oh, these are my mercenaries, and Thrawn's immediately like,
they're not.
Those are not mercenaries. That is General Baylan Skoll from the Jedi Order. Like, did you not know this? Like, Elsbeth, did you not realize you were bringing a Jedi in it? And of course Baylan's like, oh, well, that's, those are old days. I'm not that anymore. And Thrawn is wise enough. He's been around. This is what
he's yeah. And you could see his little brain working in the scenes.
Exactly. He knows enough.
Notate this for a little later, gathering more information.
Right. He knows enough to go, you're like, yeah, okay, it isn't that easy. You don't just like stop being a Jedi just like that. You know what I mean? Like, the idea of putting all your trust into these two and just being like, oh yeah, it's fine. They're Jedi, but they're not real Jedi. And it's like, oh yeah, okay. We also see that Thrawn has like this whole battalion.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Of troops. And what is really interesting is as you're looking at these troops, you're like, okay.
Quite right.
Yeah, exactly. They don't look quite right. First of all, they all look very battered and worn, and like
does he.
Well, so does he. Yeah, and granted, he's not been in his normal universe, his normal galaxy. He went through that whole battle, all that stuff. We don't know what all they've been through. But we also see that all these troopers are like bound with all this like red cloth and everything. And it's like, that
they have the gold pieces on them, kind of like a ship, which is the Japanese thing.
Right. It's interesting, when they showed the Chimera, that you could see part of the ship where the Purrgil had damaged it from the end of Rebels, and now it's been built up with this gold. And it's all kind of in line with the whole Witch Night Sisters thing. So right off the bat, you're looking at them going, something's a little weird here.
I bet they're like Merrick.
Yeah, we're going to get into that because I have a whole theory about Merrick and these characters now and stuff, and what that's all about. Because we meet a new character, a new right-hand character guy, named Enoch. And Enoch has a gold, very Japanese styled, like gold faceplate over his stormtrooper garb, his helmet and everything. Just a very different looking. We've never seen a character like this. That
was very cool.
Going back into religious history, Enoch was a character that had been sent up to heaven. Supposedly it was the theory is that he was brought into heaven and he never actually died.
Right. He's kind of undead.
He's kind of an undead sort of thing, which I think is a major hint.
Yes.
Thrawn announces, as he greets Sabine and everything, he announces that, you know what? I know you made this deal with Sabine that she was gonna be able to go and find Ezra Bridger. Let her go.
Let her go. I was like,
we're just going to let her go. He gives her a wolfhound to ride known as a howler, which is very Rebels to have this kind of thing. Yeah, Dave Filoni loves his wolves and everything. So gives her a howler, gives her weapons, including her lightsaber, gives her a Pathfinder device and all this stuff, and says...
Last coordinates they know of Ezra.
Right, yeah. Tells her, this is the last thing we knew about him, so good luck, go out there. Sabine is like, oh, okay, I guess you're just going to let me go. All right, see ya. Okay. Oh, Sabine. So she's barely gone, and Thrawn basically indicates that it's like, all right, Shin and Baylan, you guys go follow her, and when you find her...
She's the bait.
Yeah, she's a bait. When you find her, kill her and kill Ezra.
Yep.
And first off, Shin's like, wait a minute. I thought you're a man of your word. You're going to go back on your word, she's saying to her master and everything. And he's just like, well, he doesn't even really get to say anything. Thrawn kind of speaks for him and is like, well, he's not really going back on his word. It's just kind of...
Yeah, they were reunited.
Yeah, he let her go. He's, but he never said he wasn't going to kill her kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And you can see it's written all over Baylan's face as they walk away. Baylan's just like, oh man, like I don't feel good about this. Like Baylan has, in my opinion, he has no plans whatsoever to kill Ezra and Sabine, especially Ezra.
I don't think that's his game plan at all.
I don't either, because I believe Baylan has his own plans for Ezra. He's very aware of Ezra, and he at one point he even says that he is a Jedi, albeit a Balkan Jedi, he calls him, which is kind of a slang term for basically he's like a Jedi that trained out in the wild. He wasn't properly trained in the Jedi Temple and all that kind of stuff, so he's sort of like a wild Jedi, but no less a Jedi. I mean,
still powerful.
Yeah, exactly, and still with his own usefulness possibly to Baylan Skoll.
In Ezra's own way.
Yeah. So anyway, Sabine sets out and very narrowly escapes an ambush from a bunch of bandits, a bunch of cool looking, again, so much Japanese styled motif in this with those red and black bandits and everything in there. She barely fights them off. She gets to show off some of her limited but still effective lightsaber skills.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the Howler took off on her.
Yeah, the Howler took off and everything. And then we get a pretty funny scene where afterwards the Howler's back and trying to follow her, and she's yelling at him saying, "You abandoned me. You need to get out of here." And the poor Howler's like, "Oh, I didn't mean it."
I'm sorry.
Yeah. She pretty quickly gives in and forgives him, and they set off once again, and he ends up leading her to an area where he's able to get some water. As they're getting water, he starts growling and sniffing around, and she's worried maybe it's more bandits or whatever. And we come to find out that all these rocks that they're surrounded by, there's just like a whole bunch of rocks on the ground, are not actually rocks. It is another species that we've never seen before called the Noti.
They're turtles.
Yeah, they're kind of like a cross between like hermit crabs and turtles, but they're not quite turtle-y enough to be in the turtle club. But anyway, first they're kind of like freaked out by each other, but they notice after not too long that they are both wearing similar symbols, because this little Noti turtle guy shows that he has a rebel symbol on his clothing, just like Sabine has on her armor. And she realizes that they're the only
There's only one way you can get that.
Yeah, the only way they could be familiar with that symbol is they must know Ezra. So she implores them to take me to your leader, so to speak, take me to your village. And they lead her to their village and everything, and she's looking around and doesn't see anything until suddenly there's a voice from behind her, and we at long last get to see Ezra Bridger in the flesh. Were you excited about that?
At first I wasn't for sure if it was him. I was like, is this really him? 'Cause
No.
He looks so different. He's got the longer hair and the beard and all that. So.
But what's interesting about that is he does look different, obviously older, because a considerable amount of time has passed. But if you go back to Rebels and you remember the pictures
With his parents?
of him with his parents, they basically designed older Ezra to look a lot like his father.
Yeah, that's nice. That's a nice little touch there.
That was pretty cool. They're very happy to see each other and they embrace like old friends and stuff. But Sabine ends up being very coy and tight-lipped when he's asking her to like tell him more about like what's going on and how'd you get here. She decides
not right now.
Yeah, she just wants to bask in being happy that she found him and she doesn't want to talk.
Thrawn's here. You don't have time for this.
Exactly. So, but we'll get into that again in a minute. Meanwhile, Skull and Shin have been tracking Ren, and Skull is telling Shin about how he senses that there's a greater power there.
I know.
And maybe that power is why the Night Sisters and Thrawn and them are so desperate to get away from that planet and get out of that system, because there's obviously something that's driving them away.
That scares them.
We don't find out what it is, although there are theories about what it could be.
Oh, that'd be exciting.
Yeah, exactly. Lastly, we get to see that the Night Sisters are informing Thrawn and Elsbeth that a Jedi is on the way.
It's like, wait, now we see something else we didn't see before.
Right. Yeah, and again, Thrawn is not happy about this because he was like, oh yeah, I thought you said you killed Ahsoka Tano, because I'm pretty sure that's who's after us. And once again, Elsbeth is just showing herself to not be as swift and wise and everything as she thinks she is. He says, all right, well, first of all, I need you, Elsbeth, to get me all the data you can on Ahsoka Tano, because that's what Thrawn does. He's this tactician. He uses people's past and their roots and their history and all these, and how their people are and all that. He uses that as a means of figuring out how to get to them and how to
destroy them.
Right, expose their weaknesses and stuff. Lastly, he instructs the Night Sisters that he is going to need more of their dark magic, as they have a limited number of troops and everything, and he's going to need their dark magic once more. And we see these troops loading what looks like caskets onto ships and looking very ominous. That is pretty much the end of the episode. A lot to talk about with our highlights and our lowlights, so let's get into that. All right, so real quickly, let's get into some highlights. First off, I mean, the obvious highlights is it's great to finally get to see in the flesh Ezra Bridger and Grand Admiral Thrawn. That's pretty exciting. We've waited so long for this. I mean,
all season. And before that, where they talked about it and teased us about it.
Right. I mean, we didn't even know we were going to get Thrawn until we had that Ahsoka episode in season 2 of The Mandalorian. And, you know, Ezra, who knew? I mean, we never knew that Ezra was going to be something they would bring into the real films and TV shows and stuff like that, and whether it would just be left animated. Of course, the casting, I'm happy with the casting for Ezra. I think he's great. He still seems kind of a little aloof. He's very Ezra, but he's older.
I can't wait to go home.
Yeah,
like, how do you think she got here, dude? She just arrived in a ship. She freaking walked here.
Yeah, exactly. And
Ezra.
And seeing Lars Mikkelsen playing, you know, Thrawn is perfect, you know.
Yeah,
and he's
the original voice of him.
Original voice. He's playing it a little different, and I read that he said I wanted to play it a little bit different because some of the things that I did on the cartoon just didn't translate into live action.
Oh, okay.
I respect that. I think it makes sense.
He's got a little pot belly.
Yeah, well, it's been some time, you know.
He's got the dad bod going on.
Yeah, well, and it's been how many years, you know?
I really didn't think we were going to get these guys till the very end.
No, yeah, they sprung them on us, and it makes me very curious what we're going to get in the next 2 episodes, man, if they're already showing us that. We only have 2 more episodes. There's a lot to get into yet. So now I did hear today that supposedly Ahsoka season 2 already has been filming.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's cool.
that it's been filming for a little while now and stuff. So there is, I'm almost certain there is going to be a season 2, because I know they kept talking about Filoni's movie. He's going to have a movie. And I'm like, oh man, I don't want to have to wait for the damn movie. That's what we had happen with the whole WandaVision waiting for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness thing. There was too much time
in between, especially with the writer's strike and everything.
Yes.
It's going to be forever.
Exactly. So I'm really hoping that they have already gotten a lot done, so that the sooner they can get us the next parts of this, the better, because I know they can't help it. I know they have to space it out. There's all sorts of reasons for that. And then writer strikes and stuff, of course, notwithstanding. But I really think they hurt themselves when they drag it out too long.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm very intrigued with how they keep furthering the Balin Skull character. And
really loving and every bit of this. Give me more.
And again, I know we're just theorizing about what it is he's after, but I like the fact that he is not just a black or white, good or bad character, because there's a lot of things that he's saying so far. There's things about him where I'm kind of like, yeah, he's still technically a bad guy right now. Like right now, for all practical purposes, he's a bad guy. He's a foe. He's an adversary. But a lot of what he's saying
makes sense
is
too.
making a lot of sense. Now, whether or not what he's after is actually a good thing or not, because, well, we've learned that sometimes the things that some of these Jedis want to do, even when they have the best of intentions, end up having completely opposite effects.
Right.
So we'll see, but I'm very, very interested in that. Again, very interested in where they're going to go with he and Shin. They brought up the whole thing. There was the one line when Shin's questioning and saying, when he's talking about Ezra, and she's like, oh, he's like me then.
No.
Right? Doesn't he say, he says something about like,
it's like, I trained you to be something more.
That's it. Right.
More. I was like,
In what respect?
Well, what is this about?
Yeah,
what are we training for?
Exactly.
So,
we'll get into that in a minute. And then lastly, in terms of highlights, I love that they're introducing new characters and new creatures. Enoch and that whole thing is really cool, because again, we've had so many troopers, so many bad guys, and then we get this whole new take on it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wow, okay. And that's creepy, too.
He's kind of creepy, isn't he?
Yeah, with his whole die well thing that he tells Sabine. I got a kick out of that. I love that. I love the Howler.
I love the Howler.
Yeah, the Howler was
I
really
want a
cute.
Howler.
Of course you do. I love the Noti, I love that. I think they're cute.
Give or take them.
I like them. And I think they're perfect to be creatures that would be teamed up with Ezra, because as we saw from Ezra on Rebels, he loves nature. He loves creatures. That makes sense. This is the guy that he was not only wolves and stuff, but loathed cats. And anytime there was any kind of thing with nature, he always seemed to be in tune with it. Yes. Being from Lothal and everything.
All right, yeah, that makes sense.
He's kind of a nature Jedi. He's sort of a hippie Jedi at heart, you know what I mean? So to be with this traveling commune of creatures, it makes perfect sense for him.
All right, I didn't think about it that way, but you're right. And
it's certainly a damn sight better than him going and teaming up with people like Darth Maul, like he did on Rebels, and going that route.
Right.
It's like I'd rather
Ezra.
I know. I'd rather see that he went and teamed up with a bunch of turtle-y creatures than
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I'd rather see him team up with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles than with Darth Shredder. You know what I mean? Because he had that tendency at one point, and I'm hoping he's beyond that now.
All right, yeah. Okay, I'm with you there.
Yeah. And then the same with getting to see these new planets and stuff, and the Night Sisters, all that. It's really cool to see something different. I love when Star Wars introduces new stuff. Now, sometimes they introduce new things that are more familiar to us, and it doesn't always work, like the stupid 50s diner in Attack of the Clones that Obi-Wan goes to. It's like, oh, come on, man. That's just corny and silly.
Yeah, I love this planet that they're on.
Right.
And that it's ring around it are where the Purge will go to die, and it's all dead bodies.
Yeah.
That was very interesting. And the whole planet is death, basically.
Right.
Is what they call it.
It's kind of a dead planet, and it's got this like dead energy to it and stuff, which has a lot to do with some of the other things that we're theorizing about and stuff. But the one thing on that note, let's jump into the lowlights now.
Okay.
The one thing on that note that I can't say I hate it or I dislike it. I'm just a little taken out of things with is that so much of this stuff they're doing in this season, it's so reminiscent of other properties. It's so, especially, not least of which, of course, and we've talked about it before, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many parallels there. I mean, Eye of Sauron, like Gandalf the White and Ahsoka the White, and just there's so many things here that you can draw really close parallels between, to the point where it almost seems like plagiarism.
Yeah, it's a ripoff.
And, Star Wars has always had that. I know there's people that are going to argue, they're listening right now and going, no, but, Lucas always did that, and he borrowed this from Kurosawa, and he borrowed this from Dune, and
not this close.
But I feel like this is just like so on the nose that at times it's taking me out of it. And when I'm looking at Peridia and I'm looking at the Night Sisters Tower and everything, and I'm just like, this looks like Mordor.
Right?
It looks just like Mordor. Like things like that. It's not ruining it for me. I just hope that, as we only have a couple more episodes and then possibly another season, I just hope we don't get overwhelmed with too much of this. Another thing I want to bring up is, because we've talked about it as we were talking about the episode, Sabine. I know Sabine has certain things about her character, and they're trying to stay true to that, but I also feel like they're making Sabine seem a little too naive and reckless and just like not putting enough deep thought into things.
Yeah.
I understand the idea of being like, I'm so happy to see Ezra. I don't want to literally go running up to him with like arms flailing and being like, oh my God, there's all this stuff going on and you missed it and blah, blah, blah. But don't you think that there would be some kind of like urgency there to be like, hey, like, oh, I'm so happy to find you, but listen, like, we are not safe. Your little turtle friends and everything here are not safe because Thrawn is here. We've got possible dark Jedis here. All this stuff is going on. You don't even know about what happened with the whole Darth Vader thing and all that stuff. Like, there's so much to tell him about. And it's just sort of like, yeah, I don't really feel like talking about it right now. It's like, oh God.
At least Ezra had the sense, it's like, we need to pack up and go. You found me. We gotta go.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it just
buy some time.
And I just feel like they're making Sabine too, and I complained about this a couple episodes ago with the whole thing with the star map. I feel like they're making her just too, like,
Ezra?
One-track mind. Yeah, exactly.
Ezra in Rebels, she took his place.
Yeah, exactly.
So a couple episodes when you weren't here, I was like, Ezra moments. Stop, Sabine.
Right. Yeah, it's sort of, yeah, exactly.
How many times did I go, fucking Ezra?
I know. Now it's, Sabine.
Yeah.
Right? And now we've got Ezra back, so we might be going, the both of them.
Well, we did that too. Yeah. Rebels, so.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I'm not sure how I'm feeling about that. I'm really hoping they redeem that before the season is over. I'm not so sure.
Yeah, and there's some theories that she might, so.
I get really bothered by some of these convenient plot tropes when they have it where characters could easily and logically say something and bring something up or point something out, but no, they don't do that because then we can't have this problem that we want to focus on. We can't have furtherment of that so that they wind up in a pickle and everything. And I get so tired of that with writers. I'm like, come up with another way to do this. Like,
But it's so accurate. That's how humans are.
Yeah, but I don't know if they're that obvious sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes it's just too conveniently done in these series. But, yeah, I mean, it's a minor gripe. It's not like this is ruining the show for me. But there's just times, and in this episode, there were a few times where I was like, why doesn't somebody say something about, Anyway.
Because that's human nature.
Yeah, I suppose. Even out in the galaxies far,
we
far
will
away.
never change.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. Well, anyway, we're yapping.
Yeah, let's talk theories. Come on, I'm dying.
So let's get into theories. I have a few theories here. I don't think, the first theory I'll start off with, I don't think it's that big of a theory because I think most people are on the same page with this and it seems pretty obvious. I believe that Enoch and all those troops and all that stuff and Thrawn needing the witches to use their dark magic once again. Mm-hmm. I think they're all zombies.
Yep.
I think they're zombie stormtroopers. I think we have actual zombies in the Star Wars universe.
That's what Merrick was.
Yeah.
He was brought back to life.
Yes, exactly.
And they're just like Merrick.
Right. Yeah, I think that's why he just turned into space dust. Mm-hmm. He wasn't like a normal person that would get hit with a lightsaber and then slump over or whatever. Like, yeah, they're not really alive, and that's why we saw those troops not only wrapped up in those bandages and stuff, it's some kind of like binding thing that the witches use, and we saw that the animated series when we saw the witches, because we saw them doing similar things when they were working on Darth Maul, when they saved him and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. We saw them use the bandages. We saw them use that magic. And I think that's what we have here. Mm-hmm. And I think that's super cool.
Yes.
Like, I'm down, because my first thought when I first saw all those troops there with Thrawn is I was like, really? Because if I was one of those troops, I'd be sort of like, bro, you got us taken into a whole nother galaxy. We're like far away from home, and we're still supposed to be loyal to you. Like
I was wondering, like, where the hell do you get all these troops from?
Right, exactly.
In the middle of nowhere.
Exactly. So the idea that they're like basically like hordes of zombie troops and stuff.
Thrawn. It was creepy.
Yeah, and I like that it adds a creepy element to it. It was really cool. So I dig that. But yeah, I think everybody pretty much is on the same page with.
Yeah, they give us enough hints.
With that. A lot of the theorizing is going to be based around Balin's skull.
Yes.
There's that scene towards the end that we talked about where he's saying to Shin that he feels like a really strong presence, and he suspects that maybe that has something to do with why the Night Sisters and them want to get away from there. He wants to harness it. He's drawn towards it. There's a lot of theories about what that could be. What do you think it is?
I think it's going to be like was in Rebels. I forget his name.
Bendu? Yeah.
Yes. It's going to be like this big dragon
force creature,
powerful kick-ass thing.
Yeah, I could see that.
So that's what I hope it is.
Yeah, I think that would be cool. Because the interesting thing about Bendu was that he was neither good or bad.
Exactly.
He was neutral. So it's reasonable to think that it could be used to further the benefit of either side, depending on who you are and how you can manipulate it, if you can manipulate it.
Yeah.
Because we saw the Bendu fight in Rebels and everything, and he was fighting kind of helping Ezra and Kanan, but he was also kind of working against him too. He was like pretty adamant about like, I believe in whatever is like what I think is for the good of everything.
Just like every other Jedi.
Right. Yeah, he's like, I'm not necessarily, on the side of the Jedi here. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, there's a lot of that. There are people that are even theorizing. I saw some theories online of people theorizing that this might have something to do with the rise of Snoke.
Okay.
I'm not so sure about that, because I'll tell you,
We've been Snoked out. I don't want Snoke again.
Well, I would like to know more about Snoke. Snoke was such a red herring that just, boy, oh boy, that what a Snoke became a joke. Let's put it frankly. But I'm not so sure about that because it really seems like Filoni has been working pretty hard to build up all of this lore here without really addressing the sequels. Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and Rise of Skywalker. He's not done much to set up, going into any of that. And it's got a lot of people wondering, like, is he going to retcon everything? Because there's so much talk about how it, supposedly there's all this rumor and speculation that behind the scenes, Disney is very disappointed with the sequels. They're very disappointed with how they feel like it screwed up their franchise and all this stuff. And they're wondering if they're going to allow Filoni to sort of retcon a lot of things so that we get maybe a different version of it. Or,
that could be where this is going.
Or just fix things somehow.
We're going to get a Kelvin timeline here.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. That very well could be that. And speaking of timelines, a theory that I have, speaking of Balin's skull, is that I think Balin wants to find Ezra.
Yes.
Because Balin wants to figure out a way to get to the world between worlds.
Absolutely. I agree.
Because Ezra has been there. Ezra was able to travel that. He's able to do that and everything. And he doesn't know that Ahsoka was able to do that.
Right.
Like that.
He thought he killed her.
Right. He doesn't know about that. But he may know that Ezra was able to get to the world between worlds, or, who knows? There could be, stories about it or whatever. I think he wants to get to the world between worlds because I think his whole point is he wants to go back in time. And he wants to change fixed points in time. He wants to change the past. That is the power he's talking about when he's telling Shin, there's a power that I can get.
Whoever controls the world between the worlds controls everything.
Everything. Exactly. Because they talk about that. That got brought up in Rebels. And if he can control that, then he's got the power to fix things and to right what he perceived as wrongs and stuff. Now, the interesting thing about that is he's not necessarily aware that there's a terrible price to pay with that. Just like Ezra was not able to save Kanan from dying when he saw him ready to die when he was in the world between worlds, and Ahsoka told him you can't do that, because if you do that you will change everything and for the worse, everybody's gonna die. You can't mess with time like that. I don't know if Balin realizes that, because if Balin goes and undoes all this stuff, he could undo time, and the repercussions from that could be catastrophic.
Yes.
But it also begs the question of, if they have this means now to sort of retcon things in the show itself, does that mean they could potentially change time and, like you just mentioned with your Star Trek reference, create a Kelvin timeline sort of thing? Can they have a different timeline where the sequels, Force Awakens, all that, never happened? Yeah. There's a lot of possibilities here.
We're getting Loki and the Kelvin timeline.
Yeah, and then Loki's going to show up and try to arrest.
Loki season 2's coming out any minute. So,
right? Yeah, Loki's going to show up and try to arrest Balin and Shin and all that.
Yeah, the future could be because Ahsoka had the whole thing with Anakin.
Right.
And he basically, without saying it, but basically said, this had to happen. It had to happen for everything to do what it needed to do.
Right.
And Balin wants to go and change it all. And Ahsoka needs to come and stop him from doing it or fix what he screws up.
Right.
And maybe that's where they're going in this next season.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I wonder if at the end of this season we're going to see him do something that's going to screw everything up, and we're going to be left with that cliffhanger.
A cliffhanger, I bet.
So, man, like I said, lot to talk about this episode without having a whole lot to it. This episode really left a lot of questions and loose threads, as we talked about. A lot of things to consider
Yeah, because there's still the Trinity to even consider.
Right.
Like Balin's like the good and the bad. Maybe like the father, and maybe he's training Shin to be like the daughter. Maybe she's going to turn to the good.
Or nothing that says that, because
in
the original Trinity, it was the son that was kind of dark and the daughter was light. Maybe this will be opposite. Maybe Ezra is the light.
Shin. Right.
Right. And Shin is the dark, and then he's the father. Maybe they want to build a new thing. It's possible.
So many opportunities.
Yeah. Lot to think about. But
that's the fun part.
Yeah.
All the theories to see what comes true and doesn't.
Exactly. But we will be back next week with another episode. We'll be back to talk about part 7. We're winding down here. Only 2 more to talk about. A lot going on. So we, again, thank you so much for listening to what we have to say. Please send us your likes, your shares, your subscribes. Like, we need all
your
that.
Comments. We love your comments. Please do.
Especially, we want your comments. We want to know what your theories are and what you think about our theories. Because the more theories you guys bring up, especially if they're good ones, we'll talk about it here on the show. So let us know in those comments, and we will be back soon talking about part 7.
Yep.
In the meantime, may the force be with you. Don't go messing with them timelines.
Live long and prosper. Oh, bye, guys.
Wow.
Oh, wait, I can't even do it.
Oh,
See, I'm
boy.
already screwing it up.
Yeah. See ya.
Bye, guys.